Steve, what are you seeing a week later?
Well, all of a sudden, this election is getting really interesting, Harold. A couple of months ago, we thought this might be one of the boringest elections in BC history, and all of a sudden, with the implosion of the BC United and the advancement of the Conservatives, we have a race, and we have some new polling numbers that just came out. And for the first time ever, we're showing the BC Conservative Party in the lead at 45% compared to the BC NDP at 43. So changing from last week, where it's essentially reversed. The NDP was ahead 44 to 42, and now it's flipped to have the Conservatives ahead at 45 to 43, and the Greens holding steady at 10. So a little bit of a flip in the switch, and I think your readers and viewers will be very interested to see how this is unfolding.
Do you see anything in any of the answers to the other questions as to why we're seeing this shift?
There's a continued shift, and I'll tell you a few interesting things and we've seen this astronomical rise in the BC Conservatives' fortune. They were 17% just a year ago, like almost off the map for even being considered, and how we have them in the lead. What's happening here is a few things. If you do the breakdowns by age and region and gender, there's a couple of sub-stories happening here. So the NDP traditionally has been always very strongly supported by females in the province. Last wave, it was 49%. It's now dropped to 47, and we've had a corresponding shift. So female voters have made a little bit of a shift, where last wave we did, it was 35% of females supported the BC Conservative Party, and that's risen to 41%. So that's story number one. And then number two, and I mentioned this last week when we spoke, is that the BC Conservatives have broad appeal across all the age groups, and that's a bit unusual in the environment of right-wing parties. You typically have them skew higher age groups. So what's happening here is the appeal among the Conservatives has broadened to be the 18 to 34-year-old group more than it ever has. So, for example, in the first wave of this election campaign polling that we've done, it was 41% in August. It dropped to 38%, and now the 18 to 34-year-old group has jumped to 46% support. So that's another interesting trend. And then the third one is region. The NDP has typically done very well in Metro Vancouver and Vancouver Island, and that is still the case. But we are seeing improvements among the BC Conservatives in Metro Vancouver, going from 38% in August to 45% now. And it's really solidifying, they're really solidifying their hold in the rest of BC, which is a traditional stronghold, from 44% to 42%. So a lot of numbers there, but to answer your question in a nutshell is, yeah, the BC Conservatives have made gains among females, among younger voters, and they've solidified their position in the outer areas of BC as well as Metro Vancouver. So not surprising, this has resulted in a corresponding increase, I should say, in their overall voter intentions.
Has there been any shift? I know when we talked last week, there was a pretty low undecided, like around, was it 11%, which you thought was very low
It
traditionally?
is. It's very, very low. It's no, it hasn't changed in the last month. Or the last poll, it's maybe dropped slightly from 11% to 9%, which again, historically is very low in election polling. To have 9% undecided this early in the game is quite unheard of. But a couple points, not outside the margin of error, but enough to suggest the trend is firmly entrenched, that people are making up their minds early in this campaign.
There were a couple of big announcements that sort of coincided with right around, I think the last poll was in the field, and that was the involuntary care decision, EB adopting the move towards involuntary care, and then also announcing that he would eliminate the carbon tax for individuals. Are you seeing any of that in this poll?
We are seeing a slight change in the issues that voters care about. And it's been subtle, but it's been happening over time. So with the Bank of Canada announcements, housing prices and affordability have dropped somewhat. In the first early part of August, it was measured as the number one issue by 27% of residents. It's now dropped to 23%. And we've seen a corresponding shift in healthcare as a priority. It's always been a strong number two, but it's risen a few points, 5 points in the latest poll to
Hmm.
19%. Inflation has also taken a little bit of a drop as we've seen the numbers in Canada go to the 2% level. So what that does is it leaves room for other issues. So crime, environment, homelessness, poverty, opioid crisis, issues that were kind of buried in the background behind the consumer obsession with interest rates and cost of living. Now are starting to, percolate as issues that the leaders can now talk about.
And do we know how the those surveyed at least are feeling about the leaders on those issues?
We do, yes. Let me just, as we're moving around, pull it up. We do have some of those numbers, and we are seeing some changes. So let me just flip through, and there's a lot of data in this poll. But let me get to
There's always a
that.
lot of data. Yeah.
There sure is, but there has been an overall rise in momentum by the conservative leader Rustad. So we look at his overall favorability ratings have improved better or at a faster rate than anybody else. So, for example, at the beginning of August, we had 18% saying that things have improved, or their impressions of Rustad have improved. It's now 22%. We've also seen a corresponding decrease in EB's worsening perception. So it's gone from 27% to now 31. So these, trends that are measured in a couple of points each of the ways really show this whole element of momentum that's happening in the campaign. Rustad right now has all the momentum, and EB is had a slight decrease in that, and that's really, the story behind why those numbers are going up.
All right. Well, that's great stuff. I can't wait. We'll do this again next week, and we'll have another, I guess, week of announcements to digest and see how the candidates are tracking. Thanks, Steve.
Great, thanks so much, Harold. Looking forward to next week.